This is the object. A plastic cup, 16 ounces, Diet Coke, thrown from several rows up in a basketball arena. The man who threw it had 3 DUI convictions and a prior felony assault charge. He was on court-ordered probation. In 2 seconds, the Indiana Pacers lost their dynasty. The NBA lost something it had spent a decade building. 9 players went home that night, not knowing if they still had jobs. This is November 19th, 2004. This documentary is not about the brawl. It's about everything that had to be true before the cup left that man's hand, and everything that became true the moment it landed. To understand what was lost, you must understand what existed before. The Indiana Pacers had just finished a 61-win season. 61 wins. They pushed the Pistons to 6 hard games. They had Reggie Miller, in his final season, chasing a ring. Jermaine O'Neal at his peak, one of the league's best. And Ron Artest, playing the best defensive basketball anyone had ever seen. Indiana was the favorite to come out of the East. Most analysts said it. Most players believed it. The Detroit Pistons, meanwhile, were the defending champions. The team that shocked Shaq and Kobe in 2004, winning a championship as a collective, not a star-driven system. Ben Wallace, Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, Rasheed Wallace, Richard Hamilton. 5 players more than the sum of their parts. These were not just rivals. These were the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference, the most physical teams. Their first regular season meeting was on a Friday night in November at the Palace of Auburn Hills. The stage was set for a basketball game. Instead, it became the most documented crime scene in sports history. Artest was playing out of his mind that night. 17 points in the first quarter alone. The Pacers led by 20. The game appeared settled, physical, dominant. But the Pistons were defending champions. They did not fold. A 9-0 run cut the lead to 5. Then back-to-back threes. The Pacers were up 15 again. The game was over. With 45.9 seconds remaining, Ron Artest fouled Ben Wallace on a layup attempt. Hard. From behind. It was not unusual in this physical matchup. Both teams fouled hard. But Ben Wallace's reaction was not regular. Wallace shoved Artest hard. Both benches cleared. Coaches intervened. Players surrounded the incident at center court. This happens in the NBA. Shoving matches, bench-clearing confrontations. They get managed. Officials step in. And things were settling. That is the part that almost never gets told. 90 seconds after the shove, players huddled. Coaches were actively calming the situation. Tayshaun Prince never left the bench. The incident was being managed. Ron Artest, following advice about de-escalating volatile situations, lay down on the scorer's table. Artest on the scorer's table looks bizarre. Arrogant, even. But the people closest to him say it was deliberate. He had been told, if things get heated, remove yourself. Lay down. De-escalate. It was working. And then John Green threw the cup. Here is what happened in 8 seconds. John Green, age 26, Auburn Hills, Michigan. 3 prior DUI convictions. Second 1, Artest lying on scorer's table. Incident winding down. Second 2, Ben Wallace throws a towel at Artest. Artest briefly stands. Second 3, Artest is held back by coaches and Reggie Miller. Second 4, John Green's cup leaves his hand. Second 5, cup hits Artest in the chest. Second 6, Artest looks down at his jersey, then looks up. Second 7, Artest is on his feet. Second 8, Artest is in the stands. The man Artest grabbed was not John Green. He grabbed Michael Ryan, a different fan, who had nothing to do with the cup. He had the wrong man. That one mistake, made in 3 seconds, in pure adrenaline, opened the door to everything that followed. Stephen Jackson followed Artest into the stands. Not to de-escalate, to fight alongside his teammate. Jackson would later say, I wasn't going to let my teammate go in there alone. Jermaine O'Neal came down and threw a punch at a fan. The video exists. It is among the most replayed moments. Fans poured onto the court. Cups, bottles, a chair thrown. Players trying to exit were pelted. The Pistons were rushed to their locker rooms. The Pacers were trying to leave. The arena was no longer a basketball arena. It was something else entirely. Total duration, approximately 2 minutes. 2 minutes that took years to undo. In the Pacers' locker room, the full weight of what had happened was beginning to settle. Artest turned to Stephen Jackson and asked, Jack, you think we going to get in trouble? Jackson later described his reaction. Are you serious, bro? Trouble? Ron, we'll be lucky if we still have AF, ing job. That exchange is the most quietly devastating detail. Jackson immediately understood the magnitude. Artest, in that moment, did not. His teammates said he wasn't in his right mind to ask that question. This is not an excuse. It is a diagnosis. Something was wrong. Auburn Hills police entered the locker room. The team rushed Artest onto the bus, refusing to take him off. Police decided to delay arrests and review video evidence. On the Pistons side, Larry Brown stood in front of his team and cried. Ben Wallace, reflecting on Larry Brown's reaction. At that point, you could see it was something serious. The suspensions, the fines. That wasn't supposed to happen. We realized then that the league was going to take a big hit. Larry Brown crying in a locker room. That image is the truest image of what the Malice at the Palace meant. Not a fight, a funeral. On November 20th, Commissioner David Stern issued a statement calling the actions shocking, repulsive, inexcusable. Then he handed down the suspensions. Artest, 73 regular season games plus all 13 playoff games. Season over. Career potentially over. Steven Jackson, 30 games. $3 million in lost salary. Jermaine O'Neal, 25 games, reduced to 15. For $0.1 million lost. Anthony Johnson, 5 games. Reggie Miller, 1 game. He wasn't even playing. Ben Wallace, 6 games. His shove started it. Billups, Coleman, Campbell, 1 game each. For leaving the bench. Total games suspended, 146. Total salary lost, $11 million. Artest's suspension was the longest in NBA history. 73 games. The entire 2003 to 2004 Pacers season was 82 games. Artest missed nearly an entire season's worth of games in one night. For doing what? Charging into the stands after being hit by a cup. The answer to that question is not as simple as it sounds. The suspension announcement never fully addressed the thing. The thing that Larry Brown understood when he cried, that Ben Wallace understood, that Donnie Walsh understood. The players did not create the conditions that made that night possible. The conditions already existed. John Green had 3 DUI convictions and a prior felony assault charge. He was on court-ordered probation. He was seated in the lower bowl of a professional basketball arena. He had been drinking. The Palace of Auburn Hills did not stop alcohol sales until after the third quarter. Green had access to alcohol. The brawl occurred with 45.9 seconds left. Fans had been buying alcohol for 3.5 hours. The NBA implemented a new dress code for players. Why did the response to a fan's behavior result in a dress code for players? That last question should have dominated the conversation. It largely did not. The public focused on players, their criminality, their image, whether the NBA was becoming too street. The race-coded language was the most damaging aftermath. David Stern acknowledged the dress code addressed public perception, shaped not by players' conduct, but by a single incident. The issue was that a small number of players were playing into a perception that the NBA was a street league. We felt we had to address that. That reasoning is worth sitting with. The fan had 3 prior convictions. The player was trying to de-escalate. The response was a dress code for players. Let that sit. Here is the damage. All of it. In full. The Indiana Pacers failed to finish above .500 until 2011-12. Missed playoffs 4 straight years. Reggie Miller, the championship window closed. He retired that summer. Ring never came. Ron Artest returned the next season. Demanded a trade after 16 games. Jackson lost $3 million and said he never received a thank you. Steven Jackson, I put my career on the line for him. There was no thank you or nothing. The 2004 to 2005 Indiana Pacers team, widely considered one of the best teams never to win a championship, dismantled in one night. John Green, 30 days in jail, 2 years probation, banned from Pistons facilities. 1 cup, 1 throw, a man's worst decision, and everyone else paid for it. 20 years later, Artest forgave John Green. They eventually became acquaintances. 20 years later, Ben Wallace said he was a Ron Artest fan. He said it was one of those nights he wasn't. 20 years later, Larry Brown still tears up when the subject comes up. So what do we learn? We learn that one person in a crowd can change the trajectory of 2 franchises, 9 careers, and a sport's public identity. We learn that the response to a crisis reveals as much about an institution as the crisis itself. We learned that mental health in professional sports was not being addressed with the seriousness it required. A player who had requested a leave of absence was given no real protocol for what to do when adrenaline and a projectile collided. We learned that Reggie Miller never got his ring in part because a cup was thrown by a man who should not have had access. We learned that Steven Jackson lost $3 million for an act of loyalty that his teammate never properly acknowledged. The malice at the Palace was not caused by basketball players. It was caused by a fan. The system failed to protect players, then punished the players for reacting to the crowd. Ron Artest was a man with documented mental health needs, playing in an era when that was not taken seriously. He asked for help before this happened. He asked in the wrong language, at the wrong time, in an institution not yet equipped to answer. The two dynasties were both diminished by 2 minutes. 2 minutes triggered by 8 seconds. 8 seconds triggered by 1 cup. The lesson is not about players losing control. It is about a system that built the conditions for that loss and then absolved itself by changing the dress code. One more thing. In 2010, ESPN made a 30 for 30 documentary about the malice at the Palace called Untold Stories. In that film, Artest, by then Meta World Peace, said something that should have ended every conversation about who caused what. Basketball is not bigger than life. I went into the stands because I had to, because I didn't know how else to protect myself. He didn't know how else to protect himself. That sentence is not a defense. It is a description of a man who had been asking for help managing his mental and emotional responses for years, who played in a system that gave him neither the tools nor the permission to say, "I need something different." And then that system watched in real time as his unmet needs collided with a fan's worst decision, and then suspended him for 73 games, and changed the dress code. Basketball is not bigger than life. But the night the league almost forgot that, the night a cup was thrown and a dynasty died, changed how the NBA thought about the line between the game and everything outside it. Some arenas hold the sound of greatness. The Palace of Auburn Hills holds November 19, 2004. And the question of who was really responsible for what happened there. Hoop tales. Every game has a story. This one ends with a question, not an answer.